Well, if President Obama is looking for acknowledgement in some recent victories, he's apparently not finding it in the polls. Despite what some call big wins for the president on the tax deal, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the Russian missile treaty, the weekly Gallup poll has Mr. Obama's approval rating down 2 points, from 49 to 47%. His rating has been averaging 46% since November. So what's going on? Richard Socarides is a Democratic strategist and a former special assistant to President Clinton, and he is down in the nation's capital today. Okay, Richard, so where's the bounce?
Well, it's a good question. I'm actually pretty surprised that there isn't any bounce at all. I think what the polls show us now is that the president's approval rating is probably fluctuating in a very narrow range. I mean, you know, his approval ratings have been pretty much stuck in the mid-40s since late in 2009. And it may be that all the stuff that the lame duck Congress got done, which I think generally Americans are pleased with. I mean, you know, that is the way government is supposed to work. Government is supposed to, it's supposed to be collaborative. We're supposed to compromise. Nobody gets exactly what they want, but government works when we work together. So I think generally people are pleased with the Congress and with at least with the ability of Congress and the president. Not with the Congress, right? But generally, people are pleased with the ability of the president and Congress to work and get some things done in the public's interest. But it doesn't seem to have affected President Obama's approval ratings. Now, I guess you could say, with the economy not really, with the unemployment numbers not really getting much better, that the fact that his approval ratings have not been going down is maybe a little encouraging. Maybe they are operating in this narrow range, but maybe he's hit the floor and the ceiling just isn't that much higher.
All right, I want to talk to you about sort of the absence of the bounce, why they haven't gone up in the wake of, you know, President Obama held a big press conference to celebrate these accomplishments before he went to Hawaii. But first, before I get to that.
To acknowledge them.
Before, yeah, right. But before I get to that, what do you make of the fact that it went down a little bit in the latest Gallup polling? Just a couple of points, granted, but it did go down a couple of points. The polling was done from Sunday, December 26th, through December 28th. And Richard, I'm thinking to myself, President Obama was out in Hawaii eating shaved ice with his girls. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't doing a lot then, but he did do one thing that hit the news. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Went on vacation.
No,
went golfing.
No,
yes,
he made a comment to the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. Congratulating him on giving Michael Vick a second chance. And that has been getting a fair amount of play during that period, during that 26th to the 28th. And I'm just wondering what you think. Could that have had an effect on his approval rating? Could a nation be so affected by that? And maybe not just the Vick comment, but just sort of, there's been criticism of President Obama for not knowing when not to weigh in on a certain subject.
Yeah. I actually don't think it's that, although I thought that was pretty interesting that he decided to talk about that. I think that these are sort of normal fluctuations in the range, and I think maybe within the margin of error. And I think, you know, you'll see them go up a little and go down a little. I think maybe more important than the Michael Vick comment, maybe just the fact that he's on vacation. You know, there are people who, when the president is on vacation, are not that happy with him.
They disapprove of him taking any time off, even though it's a very stressful job. But what do you make of it, Richard? Because I have been so surprised at the number of emails and the number of online articles and so on about his commenting on the Michael Vick situation. And people have been saying, I mean, Tucker Carlson came under fire for saying he thought Michael Vick should have been executed. But what he also said was, that didn't get as much attention, was President Obama doesn't know the value of an unexpressed thought. Like maybe he shouldn't have weighed in on the mosque at Ground Zero. Maybe he shouldn't have condemned that Massachusetts Police Department in the wake of, you know, before the beer summit had to be held. Maybe he shouldn't have chosen this particular man to elevate into the national spotlight with a presidential, you know, tip of the cap.
You know, I think each one of those things are different, and you know, different calculations go into it. But I think we see in this president something that we're not completely used to, and that is someone who kind of thinks out loud about some of this stuff. I mean, I think, you know, this discussion he seems to be having with himself around gay marriage is another example. Remember, in that press conference on his way out of town, he said that he was kind of having this conversation, evolving, right, constantly evolving on gay marriage. So he tends to say what's on his mind, even if they're not fully formulated thoughts. You know, I think getting back more to the polling, though, I think the other thing we need to remember is that He's about where President Clinton was at this point.
He's better. Richard,
better,
as President
right?
Clinton's former special assistant, you should know he's better. Clinton was, he had 40% at this point in his term. Ronald Reagan had 43%. Barack Obama's got, 46.
Right, and he's better than President Reagan. And both of those presidents obviously went on to very successful second terms. And I think that
But he doesn't have you, Richard. Clinton had you.
Well, but President Obama has my support, though. But I think the other thing is that, he's beating all of these, everybody in the Republican field. When you do the matchups now he's beating Mitt Romney by 2 or 3 points. He's beating Mike Huckabee by 3 or 4 points. He's beating Sarah Palin by 15 points. So even though his approval ratings are kind of flat, if the elections were held today, he would be reelected president.
Yeah. Well, there's no Republican who's really, come forward as, I'm going to be the one, put your money on me. We'll have to wait until... We're going to have to wait until I come back from maternity leave for that, Richard. We'll have that to look forward to.
Oh, boy, we're going to have that to look forward to and a lot more.
Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year.
All right,
see you next year.
See you in 2011.